Hi, Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, good. So I'm just going to introduce people who aren't familiar with you. So this is Mike Henderson, who's a board-certified behaviour analyst, which is remarkably interesting to me in the context of diet and exercise. So Mike, maybe give us a quick bit of background on yourself before we dig into the nitty-gritty.
All right. So, again, I'm a board-certified behavior analyst. I got my undergraduate degree in psychology, and I got my master's degree in behavior analysis. And essentially what behavior analysis is, it's a science of behavior change, right? So things that we do, we can kind of identify as anything we do as behavior. So my role is to kind of identify specific target behaviors, things that you want to increase or things that you want to decrease, and figure out ways to make that happen. My background has been primarily in kiddos with autism, but I've kind of taken an interest in increasing adherence to diets, decreasing sedentary behavior, things like that. So,
and that's so interesting to our members because people struggle to stick with diet and exercise. It's easy for us to tell them what to do, I guess, in some ways. And by this point, I think a lot of people know roughly what to do to different levels. The biggest challenge is doing it. So in some ways, what you're doing is the most interesting of all areas of health. So what do you think the big reasons are that people do struggle?
Yeah, so if I had to make a good idea, or if I had to make a hypothesis, I guess. So one thing we talk about a lot in behavior analysis is reinforcement, right? So reinforcement tends to, you engage in a behavior, the consequence that follows it, if it's a positive outcome, then you'll tend to do that thing in the future, right? It'll increase that behavior. So with exercise, the reinforcers aren't really immediate. So a lot of the research on reinforcement has been that the more immediate, the more likely that the behavior will increase. Those kind of distal reinforcers tend to not produce the same results all the time. So exercise, usually the outcomes or the consequences that are more immediate are exhaustion, pain, things like that. So those are not necessarily the most pleasant experiences. So they tend to make you not want to exercise, right?
Interesting.
The outcomes that you're looking for, the change in body composition or the endurance, things like that, tend to be further removed. So we kind of have to keep trucking along and waiting for these far off reinforcers.
And that's not how the human brain works. We want gratification, don't we? We want to be shown reward for what we're doing immediately, really. Yeah.
So the way it works is when we engage in a behavior, the things that follow it, they're closer in proximity to that actual response. The consequences are more likely to influence that response. So if I do something, whatever consequence whatever consequence follows it, very kind of closer in proximity temporally, it will have more influence on that behavior. So yeah, the thing is when you've got these things that are far removed, it's not gonna influence that behavior. So exercise does not necessarily always relate to the outcome of increased body or better body composition. Usually exercise is immediately followed. So it's just, that's kind of how we've been trained.
So it's a direct correlation. So you're doing the exercise, you do the workout, and what you're doing it for is improved body composition, which could be further down the line, improved heart and lung health, which is invisible sometimes, so you can't even see it. And what you're feeling is pain, you're feeling tired, you're feeling, like opportunity cost, right? You're not sat watching TV. There's a lot of short-term pain. So, Mike, this is now the $100 million question: is that how can we get around that? Because that is a challenge, isn't it?
Right. So I think that we've kind of identified a lot of the research on it. Data collection, like kind of tracking, self-monitoring your programmatic, your stuff, your exercise, how much weight you're lifting, how much you're exercising, how you feel, those kinds of things. Those can provide a little bit more immediate results, immediate contact with that reinforcer. So if I'm exercising and maybe I'm lifting weights or I'm, doing the body project exercises and I can do 5 push-ups. If I'm tracking and within a week I can now do 6 push-ups, it kind of tightens that gap from the response effort to the consequence, right? So we're putting a lot of effort in the front end, and maybe it's okay to have these further removed reinforcers, right? They can still kind of influence it if you can kind of directly tie it to the behavior itself.
Okay, so I'm thinking obviously from our members' perspective. Most of our members will have physical goals, which you're saying are important, that they're put there, but there needs to be a goal or an identified benefit for the day or for the week or for the moment, rather than just this abstraction in the future.
Yeah, so short-term goals tend to be a really big component of success with any outcome. A lot of the times what we do is we take a long-term goal and we break it down into attainable units. So maybe you want to do something. I want to be, so for example, if you're working with a kid, someone who wants to be a doctor, well, first they have to go to med school. First they have to do all these things. But even more, they have to just fill out the application. So you kind of have like these lists of things and check them off. And as you see that list kind of get shorter, that's contacting some reinforcer, right? So maybe it's just those small short-term outcomes. So for example, for the community, like you said, I think if you're tracking it week by week, day by day, that's really going to kind of help in the interim. So you're going to see some progress. I think the ultimate thing is when you're exercising, you want to see some benefit. You want to see some outcome. You want to see what I'm doing is worth it. And it's hard to see, especially when, we all kind of fall victim to it. When you look in the mirror, you look at whatever, and it's never good enough. You're never really you're looking at yourself and you're like, I want this, I want that. We're kind of always looking for better, right? But I think the important thing is improvement, not perfection, right? Better, not perfect.
Yeah. Better than yesterday, right? Better than yesterday. That's all we're looking for, better than yesterday. And that, I always think that myself is, I'm not going to ever be where I want to be because no one can be. It's an impossibility. Yeah. But am I better than I was yesterday? Even 0.01%. Am I that much better than I was yesterday? Is that, and that is a reinforcing thing every day. Can I be a little bit better today than I was yesterday, right?
Yes, and success tends to breed success. So the more you contact these reinforcers, the more it increases those behaviors, right? So behavior kind of operates in that way where reinforcement, it will increase the responding in the short term, right? So if I do something and it produces a positive outcome, I'm more likely to do that more in the future. When I don't contact that reinforcer, when that doesn't produce that outcome, I'm going to stop doing that. So it's kind of like a Coke machine. Every time I put money in a Coke machine, if I push the button and it produces a Coke, I'm going to continue to go to that Coke machine and continue to push.
Not if you're doing a body project, you're not. You're staying a long way away from that Coke machine.
So if I'm going to...
Yeah, I know, but I get exactly the point. I get exactly the point.
When I push that button and nothing comes out, I'm going to eventually stop. Right.
So this is it. So we really need for people to set goals. Of course we do, because if you don't have a goal, we can't sort of not say. If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. But once that's set, do you feel that they should then leave it where it is and bring their focus onto today? And what are the things today and tomorrow that you're pressing to get out? What am I getting out? Could some of that be the emotional improvements you could feel at the end of the workout rather than the pain within the workout? I mean, what are the variants that we can look at on a day that really do reinforce us to do it again? When we press the button that is exercise, Mike, what are the cokes that fall out of the bottom for us?
Sure. That's really, I guess for each individual, I guess whatever if you're looking at, I want to improve my endurance, if that's kind of your goal, then obviously you're going to look at was I able to do the 30 seconds, 45 seconds straight of punches? Was I able to kind of, did I have to take breaks? Was I able to do all the intervals, right, without taking breaks? So I think you just kind of have to break it down into, like those little measurable units. Any kind of improvement, I guess, you kind of look for. And I think that's going to be the trick is, am I better than yesterday, I think is a good way to kind of frame it.
But we need to have a way of saying how sometimes, because otherwise the human brain can trick you, can't it, into saying you're not better, because emotions can overtake data. And we want data really to back up we empirically know that exercise improves various things, but our emotions will override that.
Yeah, so and the thing is we're gonna look for that. No, it's not working, right? And a lot of times that's our learning history is we're always kind of maybe a little skeptical of ourselves, or and I guess we believe what we see. Seeing is believing, right? So when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, it's hard to see those small changes, and a lot of them are internal. You might be burning fat, but you don't see it necessarily. That half a pound in your body essentially can fluctuate day by day, a few pounds here and there, right? So if you're only relying on your scale, if you're only relying on your image of yourself, those are not good measurements all the time.
So, sorry, Mike. I just wanted to have a specific question for you, because you're obviously familiar with the range of tools that our members have got. The fitness test. I know you've read Transform for Life. There is a number of trackers at the back there, including emotional trackers. Do you feel like they are very strong accompanying tools to support people in what you're saying here?
Yeah, and I would imagine, and I think what's going to really kind of tell is when people use them and if they're beneficial.
Yeah.
So I guess the validity of your measurement is always kind of dependent on how it does it produce the outcome that you're looking for? So if people are using them and they're beneficial to them, then that's your kind of, you know that it's effective. You know that it's beneficial. and if people do find it effective, then fantastic. I think they should definitely utilize those tools. And if they haven't started, I think that there's there's value in doing that. And again, I kind of emphasize the fact that we want immediate results, and we believe what we see. And if you're not tracking those small improvements, then you're not seeing what you're actually accomplishing.
So we need to take this to a slightly controversial place in the conversation. Not controversial, but a lot of people fear data. They fear data, they fear the scale, and I think the scale has created an irrational fear potentially. I'll say potentially, but an irrational fear of data, because that scale has given them sometimes the incorrect feedback, it's driven their life, it's made them feel anxious, and that's why we don't always encourage the scale for everybody. I think that the scale has almost ruined our opportunity for people to use data in a much more positive way. And I don't want to go too much into science speak here, but any scientist, and you're a social scientist, and I'm a physical scientist to some extent if you like, we all know that any univariate analysis is not worth its salt. We need multivariate analysis, and until we have a multivariate analysis, we lay ourselves open to that univariate, that single analysis driving us and stopping us. Whereas actually, if we had a broader spectrum of data, we'd be able to say, actually, okay, on this level I'm doing well, here I'm doing well, here I'm doing well. Yeah, the scale hasn't gone down, but I've got these other areas that I can use.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good point. And what I think is beneficial is that the way you broke it down in the book is essentially that, the scale might not move. And I think once you kind of educate people on that, and that's, again, our learning history is we've kind of been told the scale is the ultimate determiner whether what you're doing is successful. And we put so much emphasis on weight as a society. It's weight. That's the one measure, and I think it's because it's easy. So there's a scale everywhere. The doctors weigh you. The doctors take your height, your weight, and they kind of determine whether or not you're within a certain range. So it gives us a good foundation. But, I think there's other markers that we need to be looking at. I think that's kind of maybe what you're talking about is weight shouldn't be your only marker. There should be, and again, like you said, with any science, you want to kind of extrapolate all the data you can to get as good of a picture as you can. And then I think it's kind of taking, and you have a puzzle, and each measurement is a piece to that puzzle that kind of encompasses, that puzzle is the whole frame of how you're doing, right? How you are, your health or your fitness level. So weight is a small piece of that puzzle. But I think when you have all the other pieces, you start seeing a bigger picture, a better picture of what your overall health looks like.
Absolutely. And I think that when we look at concrete, trackable data, I love the word you used, easy, because I think that easy is sometimes the most dangerous opponent for us. And just standing on the scales is easy. Just counting calories is easy to some extent. Just eating less is easy, right? It might be hard psychologically, but physically it's an easy thing to do. But when we find easy is probably the long-term opponent of progress, because actually we need all of this data so that all this information, we don't need it, but if we are gonna look at tracking it and we are gonna judge ourselves for our progress, if you are gonna take that route rather than I'm just gonna be healthy route, which I'll ask you in a second if you like that as an approach. because that's an alternate approach. But if we are going to start saying, I want to lose weight, at that point we need to say, all right, let's make sure we've got, if we're going to do data, because that is data, let's do proper data. Let's not have one thing. Let's do it properly, yeah?
Yeah, I would agree. And what you're going to look at is we've already kind of identified specific things that influence weight, right? We've kind of identified that taking in less calories, exercising, like burning more calories, cutting out the garbage, right? The junk food and that whatnot. There's that rule, like this is kind of going to influence your weight over time. So even saying I ate a bag of M&Ms today, and you just kind of want to cut down that's data. That's data that can be directly kind of over the long term will be directly correlated to that weight change. So even if your goal is to lose weight, identify the things that will kind of facilitate that goal and track those. And then I guarantee you, and in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, kind of do a pre-test, post-test kind of measure where weight is the last thing you check. You're taking weight on everything else. Because again, it's easy, right? So when we talk about behavior and effort is a big thing in what produces behavior. So highly effortful responses require high rates of reinforcement, right? They're less likely. We want things that are easy. So low effort responses like weight, and it produces an immediate outcome. I step on the scale, I immediately see how much I weigh. And then how you interpret that is essentially the emotional component of it is different, right? I step on the scale and it might be one whatever, right? I'm not going to get into weight or anything like that. But depending on what my goal is how I experience that. So if you're trying to lose 5 pounds and you step on the scale and it's 5 pounds more, then obviously that's and I don't like that outcome.
Now because I think that that's such a strong point, and I want to put something to you. One of the things that I say in the book is about an objective approach, okay? Because I do find some benefit in somebody being able to look at themselves compassionately as an outsider, as a coach, if you like, and look at that person kindly, with compassion, but also objectively, because I care about your outcome, but I'm not living in your outcome. So that's why a coach can be very successful, because you say, well, you've gained a pound, but actually let's look at what you've... Whereas the individual who stands on the scale and gains a pound feels that, lives that, is driven to a different outcome by that. Whereas the coach will look at it and say, but look at all these other things. Look at what you have done. Look at the positive areas of it. And finally, if this has happened over a couple of weeks, we're getting something wrong in order for us to move forward. So let's change it. Let's not get attached to it. With more information, let's change it now.
And I think you kind of nailed it with change it. So that's one thing that we kind of preach is data is self-correcting. So the way it is that if you're taking data and you're doing everything to like you're following your program, you're doing everything the way you're supposed to, you're seeing an improvement in the amount of weight you're lifting, the amount of endurance, or how long you can kind of continue with your exercise, and you're staying at 5 times a week, whatever your goal is. If you're not seeing the improvement that you want, then there's something that's not going on, and you just need to change it. Not get emotionally attached to it. And I think what? So this is kind of the hard part is that with health and fitness, it's not these. That's the long-term goal, right? These are kind of lifetime objectives. These are not. I think when we think in terms of I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight for because I want to go to my high school reunion and be slimmer, right? That's fine, but is that where you stop? So I think when we think in terms of this is going to be a change, this is going to be a lifestyle change, then it kind of removes that need for immediacy and that need for this is just what I do, right? So there's behavioral, and then there's also kind of that trying to kind of incorporate some of that Eastern philosophy of I don't have goals, these are things that I value, right? I value health and fitness. I just do it. If you kind of want to bring some of that in, that works too. So where it's you remove that stress of I need to do this because I want this outcome. It's I need to do this because I value health and fitness, and I'm going to continue to measure these things, these outcomes, without any judgment about it.
I think so. I think so. And what you've said there, I throughout life, we oscillate, don't we? We aren't the same person our whole lives. We change as to who we are, and certainly, when you look at that oscillation curve in life, the goal-focused person needs to have a particular mindset. But if you don't have that mindset at this point in your life, I think that the word that I love, everyone is a very unfashionable word, is discipline. And it is just, these are the set of things that are my values. I do them. Why? Because I do them. Some days I don't want to do them. I don't wake up and think, oh, I've got a new toothbrush today, I can't wait to brush my teeth. I just do it because I don't want my teeth to fall out, right? That's just it.
Right.
And I think that with exercise, I think that's a very powerful, like I said, it might be an Eastern philosophy in some ways, is that we just do. We don't try and overanalyze it. We just do it, and that for me is very powerful. I write it down. These are things I do. I don't compromise on them. I do them.
Yeah, that's and even behaviorally, we tend to think about that, and so a lot of the research, even on depression and anxiety, those are kind of like depression is one of those inactivity disorders, right? Like you're depressed, and how do we know you're depressed, right? There's nothing organic or things that or visible that I can tell that you're depressed. How do I identify depression? Is a pattern of behaviors,
right.
Inactivity, anhedonia, just kind of that disinterest in doing things that I enjoy. So some of the research on depression and treating depression is called behavioral activation. And essentially what that is just go and do things and contact that reinforcer. So one of the things that we've kind of identified is reinforcement kind of works both ways. I can not do something and avoid things that I don't like, right? So that's one way that reinforcement occurs is I engage in, it's not I not do something. It's essentially I do something and it baits or kind of eliminates that thing, right? If a bear's coming at me and I run away, I escape the bear, right? So
right.
Run away from bears tends to be reinforced. I see a bear, I run. It's a bad example because, I think there's like some rules about running away from bears, but...
Yeah. I don't know. That's what I'd go for, the running away from the bear. I don't think that any amount of advice otherwise would stop me from running away from the bear, frankly. So.
Absolutely. But our alarm clock goes off and we don't want to get up, so we hit snooze. And then we get to go back to sleep. So we avoid getting up in the afternoon. So with depression and with inactivity, even just kind of to take it a step further outside of depression, but just kind of to frame it back into fitness and and exercise is I do something else. I choose to, or I go and instead of exercise, I go do something else. I avoid exercise. If that pain, that immediate pain and all that stuff that we kind of talked about, I avoid that. And that's pleasant. I don't like that. So I'm going to avoid it. So I'm going to go do something else. So it might just be sitting on the couch watching TV. We go back to effort. Effort is easy. TV, we can produce some immediate stimulation, which might be more repetitive or more pleasant than the pain that you feel from exercise. But again, we go back to, I'm avoiding this, so it increases it. Now, to flip that is the behavioral activation. What they talk about is just go do those things, and those things will produce reinforcement in themselves on their own, right?
I completely agree with that. For me, and I know that, look, when we talk about psychology and we talk about things like depression and anxiety, there is obviously lots of different viewpoints. This is a viewpoint that resonates very strongly with me and my life experiences. Now, that's not to say it will with everybody, but it's certainly, if it does resonate with you, I believe that what you're saying here is extremely powerful. I always remember my nan, wartime Londoner. She's had very big, her big thing was, stand up with your shoulders back, get on with your day. Stiff upper lip, British stiff upper lip, which is a bit unfashionable now. They call it the stiff upper lip. But actually, more than anything else, that attitude helped me to with my life, for someone who has had difficult times, to say, whatever's thrown my way, whatever's happening, shoulders back, stand tall, do it anyway. And you find that does escalate. Positive behaviour starts escalating. And you start finding, I didn't want to do that, and now I do. And sometimes it happens within 5 minutes. And sometimes it takes a week. But it always ends up with a more positive outcome than if you didn't, I find.
I would agree. And I think most of the time we're our own worst enemies as far as what we think and how we we anticipate, right? We sit there, we play these things in our head about what it's going to be like. And I don't want to do that because it's going to be horrible. I'm not a big social guy. So thinking about going to a party or thinking about going to like someone's house, I'm like, forget it. I don't want to do that because this is, and I'll just run through all these reasons in my head. When I go there, it's fine, and I have a good time. And so this idea of it's easy enough for me to just do something else, and I avoid that, which is reinforcement, right? I don't like something, I do something else, I avoid doing that. It's going to increase me doing other things.
So you should be driven by your value. Is that kind of your decision of behaviour? I'm trying to break this down. So you don't want to. I'm trying to use the social example here to break down where we are. Sorry for interrupting, but I think it's really important to grasp it for everybody. You don't want to do that, but when you do go, you enjoy it. What about? You see value in that, don't you, Mike? Because obviously, even though you're not a big social guy, you must see some value in that happening. Okay? What if you were to be someone who is a non-social person who goes along to these events or has a chat with people and doesn't see any value in that? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Does that then mean, okay, well, actually, let's not, and everyone's entitled to whatever they want to do. That's a behaviour they see no value in. No point in forcing it if it's not valued. Is that, so you're driven by value rather than feeling? Is that kind of where?
Yeah, I think so. And I think what the other thing is once you start going and you actually kind of enjoy it, I think that's when it'll increase regardless. So me saying I'm not a social person, there's nothing inherently unsocial about me.
You're human. So, we are social creatures.
that's the history, and that's kind of what we tell ourselves. So to frame that back to fitness is we're our own worst enemy. Where we might say I'm not athletic, right? I don't want to work out. I'm not athletic, so you don't work out. But if you worked out, you would be you could kind of you become athletic.
That's actually quite deep. That's actually quite deep. What you're saying there is actually quite a deep thing, because someone says I'm not athletic. For all we know, if their background was different, they would have been an Olympic athlete. So it's that reinforce. It's the drive to, okay, I don't enjoy exercise. Why don't I enjoy exercise? Because I do value the outcome. I don't enjoy it because I've not had enough experience of it, and therefore the more I do it, then I'd be like that person who says, I love exercise, I love the way it makes me feel. And you're never going to get to that point every day, unless you're Alex.
Right.
but for most people, it is the more you do it, the more you enjoy it, and if you value it, and we all value health from the start, yeah, right. That's really deep what you've said here, and very profound to me, actually.
So, and you think, traditionally, and in mainstream psychology, we all use these kind of ideas of personality, of these ideas that our behavior and is all kind of they're manifestations, right? So I behave because I have a certain personality. We look at our astrology signs and we think like, well, that's who I am. We look at I'm an introvert. I'm an extrovert. We label these things based on personality, and I'm not discounting any of that. I'm saying from a behavioral perspective, we look at, instead of talking about personality, how do you identify someone's personality is by their behavior, by patterns of behavior. Behavior can change. Obviously, that's kind of my whole philosophy. Is otherwise I wouldn't be successful. So you could take someone who's an introvert, and you can kind of have them interact with it. Once social activity becomes more pleasant, and you kind of get them doing that, they might be labeled as an extrovert. Now, is there something organic about them that makes them not want to do something, or is it just their learning history? Is it that when they grew up, they were not really exposed to a lot of social interactions, or they found it aversive?
Absolutely. I think that it's experience, it's confidence. Someone who's very popular, has very good peer groups at school, who always fits in, walks into a social environment and expects everyone to want to hear what they say, and you don't always want to hear what they say, but they expect it to be the case. Whereas there's other people, and I certainly wouldn't have said I was someone who fitted in at school a lot. I mean, I wouldn't say I had a hard time, but I certainly didn't identify with any peer group. And I would share your experience that if I go to a party and I don't know anybody, I feel like I've walked in to my worst nightmare. I'm not happy with that situation. However, if you said you've got to go and chat to everybody for 10 minutes and I give you £1 million, I'm sure I'd go and chat to everyone for 10 minutes. And probably what I'd find is it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Whereas what I want to do is stand in the corner drinking my beer, pretending that I'm okay, so no one comes and talks to me and I don't have to go and talk to anybody else. And it's crazy because actually I know I'd have a better time if I just went and spoke to people. But I'm worried probably deep down that I'm not part of their group. Yeah. So I can identify with that, And
I think you kind of talked about, a habit, like how to build habits, right? So behavior, these are all habits. The way we think about things, the way we do things are habits. And I use this example. One of my colleagues kind of gave me this thought about when we're going into houses and working with kids and trying to change their behavior, we're trying to break habits. So they've got a lot of habits. So he kind of frames it to the parents as, if I were to take your trash can and move it from where it is now and put it across the room, I guarantee you for a good period of time, you would walk to where your trash can was before you finally start learning, like, it's over here.
Yeah.
Right? Walk to the trash can. So I think a lot of these things, a lot of the thoughts that we have, a lot of the ways we engage with life is habitual. We've learned this stuff. It's been kind of shaped. It's been reinforced throughout time. So the longer the learning history you have, the longer you've been kind of coming home and sitting on the couch and grabbing a bag of chips and turning on the TV, the harder it is going to be to break. And we talk about time. No one ever has time, right? We kind of have to fit it into our busy schedules, and because we've become okay with it. Like, so the way we have our day arranged, that's habit, right? We don't like to break habit. Getting out of our routine kind of throws us off. So you're looking at trying to build in exercise and nutrition as a new habit, and break old ones. And it doesn't happen overnight. I think that's kind of where I'm getting at is, it doesn't happen fast. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to kind of stick with it. And that's why, for example, the just press play, I think that's a huge thing, because what you end up getting is, that's a simple thing that kind of gets that ball rolling. And we talk about behavioral momentum and how, you start with some easy things, and success breeds success, right? I do something simple and it produces a positive outcome. Those other little things become easy, right? So that's, again, trying to tie it back to other things is, those small units. So breaking everything you do down into and it's hard. The harder it is, the smaller the unit you have to break it down into. And I think that goes with anything: depression, anxiety, fitness, health. Because of depression, I mean, you think about how hard it is to go somewhere. If you break it down to, I don't have to go anywhere right now. I just have to get off the couch.
Yeah.
Right. So I think with fitness and exercise, it's the same way. I don't have to go exercise. I just have to get up.
I think what you've said there, for me, sums up my view of how to find meaning and progress in life better than anything else. Because when I think about times when I was younger, when I would have suffered from depression, and as you've said, depression being a psychological in some views, but in other views, depression being something that we can be analysed through behaviour, through lack of what we're doing. But I would remember thinking about the life as the problem, as we all do sometimes. The problem is life. And when you actually sit, if I was to sit here now and think about the amount of things that could happen, the amount of things I have to do, the amount of variables that are going on with life, my state of mind would quickly crumble. And I escaped that through focusing on what I have to do now and doing it, and stopping with looking at this big picture over which I have no control. Life is a frightening thing when you look at it, and it gets you down. There's so many things going on, so many things that could happen that probably won't, so many things that could happen and probably will. And yet we can't move forwards there. I find, coming down to this point of saying, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm doing this. Right now, I'm speaking to Mike. I don't have to worry about anything except speaking to Mike, because if I do, I will not be getting the best out of this conversation with Mike. And if when you come off the conversation with Mike, maybe now I've got to work out. Don't think about it. I'm going to do the workout, and all I'm doing is the workout, and that's it. And funnily enough, I get to the end of the day, and there's 20 things that have never going to make your life perfect, but it's guaranteed to be better than if you hadn't done that. If you'd have sat there all day thinking about how much there was to overwhelm you and that you can only get 20 things done and actually you need to get 50 things done and you get none. Well, 20 is a lot better than none. It's not as good as 50. It's a lot better than none, isn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of the... Yeah, I think that better not perfect, right? You're not going to be able to finish everything you want to in a day. Otherwise, you'd have nothing to do tomorrow. So,
well, there's that as well, isn't there? Yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the problem. And it's having nothing to do is probably worse than having too much to do, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So you stay active, stay engaged, and kind of keep yourself busy. But yeah, I think that's huge. It just, all the stuff kind of relates back to how you can be successful with that is, I did a CEU, which we have to do continuing education. So we have to take extra classes just to kind of maintain our certification and whatnot. And I did one on increasing physical activity, and it was a really interesting thing. And the guy that was doing it had done his thesis on increasing physical activity in the workplace, and so he's big on like decreasing sedentary behavior, increasing physical activity, and his whole thesis was on getting people just to move more, right? So he'd have like little reminders for them to move, and I think that's even those little things make a big difference when it's like a cumulative difference. So if I don't, and it seems so small, like even the steps, like we kind of look at steps and is that really beneficial? Like, I didn't do my 30-minute exercise, but I got all my steps. That's still better than sitting around, right? And if your job requires you to sit, if your job requires you to do this, so I think it's a huge thing just to take those little, just make minor behavior change, right? So if you can't do an hour-long exercise, what can you do? And then fix that. And then the more you do, the more I think you want to do. So I think in terms of behavior, just kind of do it rather than think about it. So we can sit there and talk ourselves into it, but that time that we're trying to talk ourselves into it, that time that we're trying to think about how to make this happen, is time that we could be using to do to actually do it, rather than sit like in the morning when I'm laying in bed and I'm like, should I get up and exercise? Should I get up? Blah blah blah. Like all these things, I could spend a half hour just sitting there trying to talk myself into it, and if I had gotten up.
I completely agree. I have one of the things that I've really learned over the years is set down your agenda, set down your values, if you like. And one of my values is to work out 5 times a week, right? So that's a value. The voice inside of me, in my head, will come up with some extraordinary reasons why I shouldn't do it. Amazing ones, the justifications that my psyche can give me for not seeing through on my values that I've set out are so remarkable. I do not enter a conversation with them, because I will lose that conversation and I'll say, you're right, I shouldn't work out today. You're absolutely right. But they're wrong. That is wrong. I've set it out. I want to work out 5 times a week. I am not listening to my justifications of why I shouldn't, because I've decided it's wrong in advance, and therefore I don't enter the conversation. As soon as it starts, I switch it off. I'm going to do it. I'm not listening. I'm not listening to myself. And it's kind of, if you allow the conversations to get into your mind, you will get yourself out of what you set down as a value 100%, and you'll justify it as well. And you'll justify it rightly too.
Yeah. And we do that, and I think I tend to think about this, and even so, one of the things that we'll work on is a lot of times people will get bent out of shape about, like the kids that I work with, someone calls them a name. So I think words, language, like all these things have a very powerful effect, but it's just words. So these thoughts, think about it, it's just, those are just words. They're just thoughts. They don't have to influence my behavior. They don't have to impact it. Thoughts themselves are behavior. It's just another behavior. It's just another thing that we're doing. But they don't have to have any influence on what we do. And I think that's where, I mean, obviously when we engage in certain things, there's some kind of process going on. There's some kind of psychological process or chemical process. But if I sit here and say, I'm doing jumping jacks, right? That's just words. Am I actually doing jumping jacks? No. Like, we can look at me and identify that I'm not doing jumping jacks. So the correspondence between what I say and behavior is not really always there's not direct correspondence.
Absolutely.
So saying that there's all these reasons why I can't exercise, they're just words. They have no influence. They don't have to influence your behavior.
No, and I think that's it. And I think that you can make a choice, can't you? I think that when you make that decision, I'm going to do 20 jumping jacks as the decision, I think that you can be the arrow or you can be the feather in the wind. Because if you let the arrow's going where it's going to go, and that's it. It's gone. I've let it go now. I've decided I'm doing 20 jumping jacks, and I am an arrow. I say it and I do it, or I'm going to be the feather in the wind. And that feather in the wind may well end up the same place as the arrow. But it might not, because it's influenced by everything that's going on around it. And it can be blown around, it can be blown there, it can be blown there. And it might end up where I want it to go. Because it happens that the wind blows that way, or it might blow that way. And so I think that at the point of decision, I'm going to do this. Do it. As you said, change. Just change. Just the best advice, unfortunately, is if you want to change it, change it. That's it. Yeah? Is that kind of...
Yeah, essentially. And it's really, you know, obviously it's easier said than done, but the more, again, we go back to that reinforcement of, if I do it, I will continue to do it. So success breeds success. And I mean, and finding those small units, those things to kind of celebrate any success. I think that's a huge thing, is celebrate success. Celebrate any minute level of success. And over time, that will kind of accumulate into bigger things. So again, small units. I think that's if I had to drive something home, it would be celebrate small successes.
And you can break that down as far as you want, right?
Yes. Better, not perfect. Am I better than I was yesterday? Am I better than I was 10 minutes ago? And again, I really kind of want to emphasize that talking yourself into something doesn't really exist, right? Like, you know, you can't talk yourself into something, and you just do it.
Mike, that is... there's sometimes I hear something and I know it will stay with me forever. You know, you get things and you know that it's pierced your soul. Talking yourself into something doesn't exist. Has just pierced my soul. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. You either do or do not, like Yoda says. But you sometimes think you can talk yourself into something, but you can't, can you? You can't. They're just words. They're just words. You're absolutely the watershed moment for me there. Absolutely brilliant. It doesn't exist. You do it. You can't talk in or talk out. They're words.
Yeah. If you're talking yourself into it, you're not actually doing it. Now, but you might be, I mean, you know, you might be talking about the benefits. You might be doing all this kind of evaluating the situation, but at the end of the day, you're not actually doing it.
No.
Right? I can sit there for 30 minutes and try and talk myself into something, and still not do it. Right?
Exactly.
I can say, I'm going to go skydiving. I'm going to go skydiving. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then I get up there and I'm like, forget it.
Because that internal dialogue it can go one way or the other, as we've said. It's not. It doesn't exist because It might work and it might not, but it hasn't got anything to do with the conversation. That doesn't. What actually happens is what happens. The conversation is forgotten in history. The action is what drives the change, and that's just, you either do it or you don't. All of the pontificating in the world isn't going to change that. You can't. You don't get any prizes for pontification, do you? You get prizes for doing.
That's it. So I mean, I obviously that can get taken pretty literally, right? Like doesn't exist. Like obviously, yeah, it has some influence, but it doesn't have to. We don't have to like rely on talking ourselves into it or pumping ourselves up to do something.
But I'm less interested in the literal absolution, if you like, of the words, and more interested in the outcome. If we say, talking myself into something doesn't exist, talking myself out, I plan it, I do it, it's done, you create an environment whereby we are creating results for our members. That's the big thing for me, because I've kind of, to an extent, after many years, got it down for me. I'm interested in finding ways that I can communicate to our members to make sure that they achieve their goals. And I feel like that is a real strong way of looking at it. Let's stop trying to talk ourselves in and out. Let's just do, guys. Come on, let's just do. Let's just do. And I want to take you on to something quickly that we're speaking about. Your key message here is break it down. Let's have a look at a Body Project member's journey and what they've got to do. They've got to eat healthily a certain amount of times a day. They've got to eat or avoid junk food probably a certain amount of times a day. They've got to get workouts done a certain amount of times a week. So we can assume that very few people are going to succeed throughout the week at every single item on that list. And even if we go into the workout, we can look at the workout as a 30-minute workout, or we can look at it as 8 5-minute sections, six 5-minute sections, or we can, my math is off there, or we can look at it as 20 sets, or we can look at it as a warm-up, an exercise portion, a cool-down. So we can keep breaking down that success. I got the set done. Boom, I rock. I rock. I just did 30 seconds of jumping jacks. I rock. Great. Done that. Feel good. That's a success. And even if I press stop now, that's already a win. I'm already a winner. So I'm going to think, I did 30 jumping jacks today. That's better than no jumping jacks. I pressed stop. I didn't go back to it again. Okay, no problems. Tomorrow I'm going to do 2 sets of jumping jacks. Now, we want people to do more than that, but you get my point. It's this kind of where you want people to take their thought processes. Yeah,
better, not perfect, right?
Better.
You don't have to, I mean, obviously none of us are going to be perfect. Perfect is out of, like, we can't. But we can do better than we did yesterday.
So let me ask a question. Let me ask a question.
Sure.
Because I'm conscious we're running out of time, so I'm forcing the pace here a little bit. If I do a workout yesterday for 20 minutes, the next day I only do 15, I'm just trying to square a circle here, and I didn't do better than yesterday. How are we framing that? Because we still did 15 minutes of workout today. We did 20 minutes yesterday. Now, I'll put it to you. How are we framing that?
So this is the importance of taking data over a period of time. Because day by day, we're going to have some variability. We're going to have maybe 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. But where did you start? Did we start at 30 minutes and now we're at 20 minutes, 15 minutes? That's kind of how you frame that, where I'm looking at it in comparison to where I was. If I started out doing 30-minute exercises and being able to pump out like the whole exercise without stopping, and now I'm only doing 20 minutes, now I'm only doing 15 minutes, then that's not something we want to see, right? That's where you make a change. Now, if you're at 5 minutes last month, and now you did 20 minutes yesterday and 15 minutes today, you're still doing better than you were a month ago.
Okay, so yeah.
And you continue with that. So when I look at I'm a big one to use Excel for graphs. I look at trends. So trends and data. So if I'm looking at if I'm trying to work on increasing the number of requests the kid makes, I'm going to look to see a steady increase. Now, there are going to be days where there's less. There are going to be days where there's more. But essentially, I'm looking at the overall trend. If I'm looking at decreasing occurrences, like decreasing bad behavior or like negative behavior, like hitting or whatever, I'm looking at decreasing, right? So food consumption over the number of junk food you eat. If you're tracking how many times I ate like M&Ms or whatever it is, or how many M&Ms I ate, you're going to get some flux. But as long as there's a steady pattern of going down, once you start seeing it creep back up or kind of go the opposite.
Here's the power. You're absolutely, you're really hitting on a precise nerve there. Because if we take the example of a person who is over time, they eat 10 bags of M&Ms a month, right? They've not been eating any M&Ms, but then they have 3 bags of M&Ms and then they go back. The person who has seen and analysed that I was eating 10 and now I am eating 3 sees success. The person who does not have any data and is just expecting I'm going to keep getting better and better and better is going to say, I've eaten 3 bags of M&Ms. I am a failure.
Yeah.
And they go back to the old 10 bags of M&Ms again. Whereas if they looked at it, the same 2 behaviour patterns, one of them is tracked and analysed and rationalised and objectified. I'm looking at this from the outside in. I'm not living in it. I'm just looking at it. I look at that graph. I don't know anything about the person. I see a person who's eaten 3 bags of M&Ms against one who's eaten 10 bags of M&Ms. If I'm living in it, I was doing so well, and now I've eaten 3 bags of M&Ms. It's that same message. We've come full circle, haven't we?
Yeah, and what you'll find is that data kind of will be the positive or the negative outcome that you might be looking for as far as tying it to that behavior. I'll tell you what, accountability is a big thing, right? So even on tracking your stuff on MyFitnessPal, when you see you've gone over your calories or something like that, that's potentially aversive. It's like, oh man, I didn't like that. I'm not happy about that. So tomorrow I'm going to be very vigilant about keeping it under my calories. You might make a change just based on that data alone. So for example, your example scenario with today I worked out 20 minutes, or yesterday I worked out 20 minutes, today I worked out 15. You might make an immediate change because, if you're tracking that, you look at that and you say, oh man, I need to work out 21 minutes tomorrow because today, or I need to kind of make that up. Maybe I need to do 25 minutes. So setting those short-term goals. Today was 15 minutes. Yesterday was 20 minutes. I don't want to keep going down. So tomorrow I'm doing 25. I'm committing to that. And then you just do it. At 20 minutes, you don't stop. You keep going, right?
Mike, I think that, we are pretty much out of time, but for me, this has been illuminating. A lot of the ways that you look at it completely resonate. They completely resonate with me. They sit with my mode of thinking, and I want to say something because I think that for some people, they'll think, just do it. It's a bit harsh, isn't it? It's a bit harsh to say, but actually, I see it the opposite way. I see it as empowering. I see this message as you can do whatever you want. You are not built by your history. You're not built by what you think you know. You are completely in charge of who you want to be and what you want to do without losing anything about the uniqueness and specialness of your personality and your traits and these things. You are powerful. That's the big message for me. You are a powerful person, and you're so powerful that you can change your behaviour by choosing to, because that's your power. It is not your history, it is not your genetics, it is not what you've experienced before, it is your choice and power. You. And that, for me, your philosophy, in that way, sits completely comfortably with mine, because I believe that.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said as far as the history, because we do, you know, our learning history kind of shapes where we are now, but it doesn't mean that it can't change. We're kind of constantly evolving. So a lot of the things that we do, and I think I used this example with like birthday cake, right? Like, have you ever been to a birthday party without birthday cake?
No, not a kid's one, certainly. Certainly
right?
not a kid's one.
Not a kid's one, right. So, I mean, from a young age, like, we're taught that junk food and these kinds of things are, they're rewards, right? Cake is a reward. If I do something great, it's let's go to dinner and let's get some food. You talk about treats. Junk food is a treat, right? These are all treats. So we frame that from a young age that food is a reward.
Yeah.
Food is associated, like junk food, not celery, not carrots, not apples. Those are like what you have to eat, right? Like, you have to eat that before you get dessert. Dessert is the treat. Like, you go out, you get an A on your report card, we're going out for ice cream. So we've kind of conditioned a lot of these foods, as well as like the biological processes. We've kind of conditioned these as rewards.
It's layered, isn't it? I mean, there is obviously some physiological response. Serotonin, dopamine would be released as an example. But you know what? But beyond that, if we were to grow up with this scenario that junk food is maybe punishment, as a complete example, you've been naughty. It could go two ways, couldn't it? It could, if you reinforce it, it could be that people decide to do naughty things. But let's say it's a punishment to a child to have a cake. They might frame that completely differently, and their aversion to chocolate would be. I mean, it might not be the case, but I guess that you get the point I'm making.
I mean, I guess you could make them eat so much that they felt sick.
Like have you read Matilda, the book Matilda by Roald Dahl?
Yeah.
When the Mrs. Trunchbull makes the kid eat cake in front of everybody until he hates it. It's kind of we wouldn't condone that in any way, would we? But it gets the point. It makes the point, doesn't it? You could look at it a different way and have people's conditioning different around food, and it's so strongly conditioned with reward, with treat, with success, with celebration that our mind tunes into. If I have a chocolate bar, this is psychologically a good moment, as well as physiologically, and we compound the problem.
And the problem is that we tend to go, okay, as long as I exercise, I can have a chocolate bar, right? That's your reward.
Yeah.
I get a chocolate bar.
A lot of people do it.
Right? And we've got to switch that. We've got to change that to just the outcomes of exercise alone are kind of their own reward and things like that. And that's why I think the data is a huge catalyst for that, where if you're tracking just success alone.
So if we can give a 30-second concluding, because we could talk for hours, but if we could give a 30-second concluding statement for people to take away, what would if you could, especially for the people who train with us, and you know, because you train it, and your wife Fran trains with us as well, so you know their journey, you know the specifics. What's just a 30-second concluding statement that you'd like to say to them? Sorry, Mike. I'll put you on the spot, haven't I?
I think the biggest thing that I would kind of promote is just kind of to stop thinking about it, and I think the just push play is a huge thing. I really kind of, that resonates with me, because it's just engage, right? Just engage in life, but don't just kind of break those those goals down into small units and just look for any improvement that you can, because will breed success. When you start something and you kind of encounter some success with it, it's going to make it more likely that you're going to continue to do that, as opposed to when you continuously talk yourself into "I failed," or if you have these expectations that you're not going to meet anytime soon. You've already kind of set yourself up for failure. So set yourself up for success.
Set yourself up for success. There we go. Because that has to be for me the concluding line. Set yourself up for success. Set yourself up for success, not failure. And that, Mike, it's been so. I use the word illuminating. It's been educational to speak to you. I mean, it's just amazing to hear from such an expert's perspective the things that what I quite like as well is you're reinforcing a lot of the stuff that we are trying to put out there, but giving us more meat on the bones for our non-vegan participants. It's just putting that bit more in there, that clarity, that empirical data that you're able to gather as a scientist. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Really appreciate it. See you later.
Take it easy.